person made you feel like not enough. And even if someone else comes along and they treat you good, it doesn't make you feel like enough. You have to find the bad person and make them do the right thing, which makes you enough, because that's where the validation got taken away. Consciously, this is not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing.
No, it's not.
She's going to keep putting herself in a situation where she's testing to see.
Right.
And everyone does that.
Women need safety too, especially with like them being vulnerable. And I especially think that it's hard for women these days to be vulnerable because they've had to put their guard up when they're single.
Yeah.
To not get hurt by men.
And it was exasperated by the kind of trauma that you had about perfection. And if you make a mistake, you can't make a mistake, you can't be loved. And so, I had felt many times that if I expressed anything that was negative about some interaction that we had, that you would go hyper defensive on it and not listen to me anymore. And that was the thing that I was struggling with.
Makes all the sense.
Well, one common human thing, and I deal with this all the time with coaching guys and trying to dissect like what they do, like why do people do this? And we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, is that we do this, like all of us do this. We recreate the bad experiences in our life in order to get a different outcome so we can feel validated or okay, right? So that's why you date the wrong people over and over again. It's like, why do you keep on dating assholes? Or why do you keep on dating? I have a guy that dates women that are avoidant. And it's like, why do you keep on doing it? Because you dated someone who was avoidant and you had a bad outcome. And so now if you can get someone else who's avoidant, and this time you can get them to not be avoidant and have a good outcome, it makes your life feel good.
Like you proved a point.
Right. Like
to yourself.
You're like, you're a good enough person. Like it makes you feel like enough, right? Because that person made you feel like not enough. And even if someone else comes along and they treat you good, it doesn't make you feel like enough. You have to find the bad person and make them do the right thing, which makes you enough, because that's where the validation got taken away. And so it's
like fixing people. You can't fix people.
Right.
Or you can't make them what you want them to be.
And so it's the same thing like what you're saying is that a woman might keep on repeating this. Like, if he doesn't love me at my worst, I have to keep being at my worst.
To make sure that I'm safe. And if I'm bad, he'll still love me.
And so as a man, you might be like, well, if I hug her when she's screaming, and she might not even like the hug at that point, but if you persist in showing her that she truly believes that you're still loving her at her worst, it will solve that loop that keeps on going. Right? Again,
crazy cycle.
Right. Because now she feels like, okay, he actually does love me at my worst. But if she doesn't feel like he loves me at my worst, somehow, subconsciously, this is not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing.
No, it's not.
She's going to keep putting herself in a situation where she's testing to see.
Right.
And everyone does that.
Women need safety too, especially with like them being vulnerable. And I especially think that it's hard for women these days to be vulnerable because they've had to put their guard up when they're single.
Yeah.
To not get hurt by men, and then it's really hard to let that down. And women really only want to let it down for a man who makes her feel safe and accepted and loved no matter what. And so if you're not giving your wife that, then that's where you're running into a lot of struggles too, which she should be giving you that as well. Like this isn't a one-sided thing.
Right.
And I know your situation in the conversation, you felt like I didn't understand you and that I didn't give you the space to talk about your problems and things like that. And I was taking the things that you were saying personally, which some of that was the language that we figured out now that you were using that did feel a little bit more of like an attack on me. And so then I had to double down on defending myself, which just led to more
and it was
complications.
And it was exasperated by the kind of trauma that you had about perfection. And if you make a mistake, you can't make a mistake, you can't be loved. And so, I had felt many times that if I expressed anything that was negative about some interaction that we had, that you would go hyper defensive on it and not listen to me anymore. And that was the thing that I was struggling with until we figured that, and we figured out on both levels, right? So one is like we talked about, is that there is this trauma that you have, and we were able to identify that, and then and I feel like you realize, okay, yes, I am doing this, and this is why, but I'm still loved, right? Which still, it's not just instantly cured. It's like, like, but now I think hopefully you feel you have more of the freedom to even act out, and you're still going to be like, it's like,
no, I'm not doing that again. But
well, I'm not saying
it was a learning moment. Yeah.
But also, like you were talking about too, the verbiage of it, because now that I'm aware of it too, which it's kind of weird because I was aware of it, but I didn't think of the solution, which is that also I need to watch the way that I say the things so that, you have that predisposition to feel like the things are going to be an attack when they're not meant to be an attack, but let me be more careful in the delivery so that it really isn't perceived that way at all, right? You know what I mean? So I think it takes, it takes understanding. Also, we all have traumas. You need to understand your partner's trauma and work with that, not against it. So.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, I can't even again, this is what would happen in the whole conversation is like, I can't remember exactly what I came to you to talk about at first, but then I tried to express that something was bothering me. And then that turned into, you were like, you don't trust me and you don't know who I am. And then also throughout this whole conversation when we had it last week, I still didn't get the first part resolved, like the first thing that was bothering me. So that was also welling up inside of me, which was probably why I was like, and that had happened in multiple conversations of ours where I would come to you about something and then you would get triggered by something that I said and want to talk about a different issue in the middle of the conversation. And then by the end of it, I just didn't go back to that feeling. And then I also was feeling like you wanted me to hold space for your emotions, but mine got skipped over in the beginning, which a lot of women probably, that's why they don't act like they have the capacity to deal with their husband's emotions. Is because there comes some points, sometimes it's all the time for women. Sometimes it's, every once in a while. It definitely wasn't all the time for me, but it was enough where I had shoved so much stuff down and felt like I had to be the non-emotional one to get the conversation to get anywhere. And then I didn't get my emotional release. And as the emotional person in the relationship, that was really, it's more detrimental for a woman to not get her full emotional release, right? Because that's what we are. We are emotional. And so we need to get that out. And so when we would have these conversations, you would be like, are you even listening? But I would be listening, but I'm like, I don't want to say anything to cause you to be more emotional or more triggered. So I would listen to you, and then to the point where I would try to get to the point without being defensive, which was also hard, because I hadn't gotten my grievance that I came to you for fixed. But I would eventually get to a point where you felt better-ish at least. And then I, by that point would be like, I don't even know what I said. And I still feel this thing, but I don't know how to bring it up because now it's so far buried under all this other stuff.
Well, and it's multiple things. And it's better